Everyone in the city knew Mr. Raymond Cole, the billionaire who built an empire from nothing. His face was on every magazine cover, his name on every skyscraper. He was the man people bowed to, the one who never smiled without purpose. But one rainy afternoon, inside a quiet diner on the edge of town, a young waitress named Layla Parker stopped mid-step, her tray trembling in her hands. Her eyes locked on the framed portrait hanging on the diner's wall, the one she had seen 1,000 times before, a portrait she had never paid attention to. Until today, because sitting in one of the corner booths was Mr. Raymond Cole, himself, the same man whose name echoed power and fear. And behind him in the frame was a smiling young man in uniform, the same man Lila called Dad. Her voice shook as she pointed at the portrait, her heart racing faster than she could breathe. "Sir, why is my father in your office portrait?" For the first time in his life, Raymond Cole froze. The color drained from his face. His hand tightened around the coffee cup, because that man in the photo wasn't just anyone. He was someone Raymond had buried in his past. And now, his past was standing right in front of him, holding a tray, wearing a name tag and demanding the truth. The diner was nearly empty, save for the faint hum of the coffee machine and the sound of rain capping against the glass. The neon sign outside flickered weakly. Harper's Diner, a place forgotten by most, but home to those who had nowhere else to go. Layla Parker moved quietly between the tables, her apron stained with coffee and the scent of exhaustion clinging to her like a shadow. She was only 22, but her eyes carried years of unspoken stories, loss, love, and the heavy weight of trying to stay afloat in a world that rarely noticed her. Her brother Ethan was the reason she kept going. Every dollar she earned was a brick in the fragile wall protecting him from the life they'd escaped, a life of debts, hospital bills, and broken promises. That morning, as the rain poured harder, the diner door opened with a soft chime. Every head turned. A man walked in, tall, sharply dressed, the kind of presence that made the air tense without a word. His black umbrella dripped rain onto the tiled floor, and his shoes gleamed like polished obsidian. Mr. Raymond Cole. Even if Layla didn't recognize him at first, the whispers around the room gave him away. The Raymond Cole, billionaire, philanthropist, the man whose empire stretched across industries and continents. He didn't belong here, not in this forgotten diner. And yet, here he was, sliding into a corner booth, his eyes distant, as if he were searching for something lost. Layla took a shaky breath, grabbed her notepad, and walked over. "Good morning, sir," she said softly. "What can I get you?" "Just coffee," he replied, his voice deep, polished, but weary. "Black, no sugar." She nodded and turned to leave, but something caught her eye, the wall behind him. A row of old photographs hung there, yellowed with time. Pictures of the diner's history, its owners, and the people who once worked there. One photograph stood out, an old man smiling with his arm around a young soldier in uniform. Her breath hitched. She knew that smile, that face, that dimple on the right cheek. Her father, Daniel Parker, her father, who never came home from the service. Her father, whose name was engraved on a government-issued gravestone 2 towns over. And there he was in the same photograph where Mr. Raymond Cole stood beside him, both younger, both smiling. Her tray rattled. She turned back to the billionaire, her heart pounding. "Sir?" she whispered, pointing at the photo. He looked up, puzzled. "Yes?" Her lips trembled. "Why? Why is my father in your office portrait?" For a heartbeat, he didn't move. Then slowly the color drained from his face. His cup stopped halfway to his lips. He stared at the picture as if the world had stopped turning, and in that fragile silence something deep and old cracked open in his chest. A memory he had buried under years of lies, guilt, and power. The coffee steamed between them. Neither of them spoke, but everything had already changed. Raymond Cole had faced presidents, rivals, and scandals, but never silence like this. He sat frozen, the coffee growing cold between his fingers, as the young waitress's words echoed in his head. "Why is my father in your office portrait?" The question sliced through the calm exterior he'd worn for decades. He slowly turned toward the photograph again. There it was, that moment frozen in time, himself, 20 years younger, standing beside Captain Daniel Parker, smiling proudly after the opening of their first logistics hub. Raymond's throat tightened. He hadn't thought about Daniel in years. He couldn't. The last time he saw that man was the day everything fell apart. "Sir?" Leela's voice quivered. "You knew him, didn't you?" He blinked, his composure slipping. I worked with him a long time ago," he murmured, his voice barely audible. "He was my friend." Her heart leapt painfully at the word. Friend? That didn't make sense. Her father never spoke of a friend named Raymond Cole. He died when she was 6, leaving behind a folded flag, an empty house, and a mother who cried herself to sleep every night. "Where did you know him from?" She pressed, trying to hide the tremor in her tone. Raymond hesitated, his jaw tightening. "Overseas. He was a brave man. I'm sorry for your loss." But the apology sounded rehearsed, like a man trained to sound human when his soul was miles away. Leela frowned. "My loss? You say it like you weren't part of it." That hit him like a slap. For the first time in years, the walls of his self-control began to crack. He reached for his wallet, pulled out an old, creased photo, the same one from his office wall. Daniel, grinning. Himself younger. Behind them, a project site, Cole and Parker Logistics, 2003. Her eyes widened. "Cole and Parker?" Raymond nodded, pain flickering behind his calm mask. "We started it together. He was supposed to be my partner." "Supposed to be?" she repeated, her voice sharp with disbelief. He swallowed hard, guilt swirling like acid in his gut. "Things didn't go as planned. Your father left the company before it took off. I owed him more than I could ever repay." Her heart sank. Left the company? Her father? That couldn't be right. Her father never talked about building anything, never mentioned money, power, or business. Just service, loyalty, and something about a deal gone wrong. Tears welled in her eyes. "He wasn't supposed to die, was he?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. Raymond froze again. The question landed like a blade. He didn't answer, couldn't, and in that silence, between the raindrops, the ticking clock and the slow drip of guilt, Lila knew whatever happened to her father. This man knew more than he was saying. She stepped back, her chest tightening. "You're hiding something," she said. Raymond looked up slowly, his eyes tired, haunted. "Some truths," he said softly, "don't stay buried forever." And with that, the past began to stir, waiting to rise again. 20 years earlier. The air in Kandahar, Afghanistan, was thick with dust and the smell of diesel fuel. 2 men stood beside a convoy of armored trucks, both wearing fatigues, both laughing like brothers in a world that had forgotten how to smile. Captain Daniel Parker, the soldier with a heart too big for war, and Raymond Cole, the ambitious contractor with dreams that stretched beyond battlefields. "Someday," Raymond had said, wiping sweat from his brow, "we'll build something real. No more blood, no more chaos, just a company that changes lives." Daniel grinned, his hand firm on Raymond's shoulder. "You mean Cole and Parker?" He teased. "You always want your name first." Raymond laughed. "You're the soldier, I'm just the guy who signs the papers." That night, under the fading stars, they shook hands and made a promise. "When the war ends, we build our future, together." But promises are fragile things in a place where every sunrise feels borrowed. Weeks later, disaster struck. A shipment meant for humanitarian aid went missing, stolen, rerouted, lost in the fog of war. The U.S. military launched an investigation. Daniel was blamed. Raymond tried to intervene, claimed it wasn't Daniel's fault, that the paperwork had been altered. But no one listened. The only way to save the company's future was to cut Daniel loose, publicly, officially, permanently. And Raymond did exactly that. He told himself it was business. He told himself Daniel would understand. But when the headlines hit, Captain Daniel Parker dismissed amid corruption probe. Raymond knew he had destroyed his friend's life to save his own. 2 months later, Daniel disappeared on a mission that went wrong. No body was ever found. Just a folded flag and a letter Raymond never opened. He had kept the photo, their handshake, their dream framed on his office wall ever since. A silent gravestone for a friendship buried under guilt. Back in the diner, Raymond's mind drifted between past and present. He could still see Daniel's smile, the kind that forgave before it accused. And now, staring at Lila, Daniel's daughter, he saw the same eyes, the same strength, The same quiet fire. Your father, he began softly, voice trembling, was the best man I ever knew. I failed him. Layla's lips parted. Failed him how? He didn't answer, not with words. Just a haunted silence that said more than any confession could. Leela's throat tightened. You said some truths don't stay buried, she whispered. Then tell me, Mr. Cole, what truth are you running from? Raymond looked out the rain-soaked window. Because the truth he had buried wasn't just about guilt, it was about betrayal. And now it had found him again? Wearing her father's eyes. The rain hadn't stopped all evening. By the time Lila closed the diner, the city outside had sunk into puddles of light, street lamps flickering like tired eyes. She untied her apron, her mind still spinning from what had happened. Your father was the best man I ever knew. I failed him. Those words played on repeat like a broken record echoing in her chest. When she reached home, a small apartment on the second floor of a rundown building, her little brother, Ethan, was sitting cross-legged on the couch, surrounded by open textbooks. At 14, he carried their mother's softness and their father's curiosity, both stitched into a frame that was growing too fast for his worn-out clothes. You're late, he said, glancing up. Diner keep you hostage again. Layla smiled faintly. Something like that. She placed her purse down, hesitated, then sat beside him. Ethan, do you remember Dad's old photo, the one in uniform? He nodded. Yeah, Mom used to cry whenever she saw it. Why? She took a shaky breath. I saw him today. Ethan frowned. You saw who? Dad, in a picture. Hanging on a wall behind a man named Raymond Cole. Ethan's eyes widened. The billionaire guy? The one who owns half the city? She nodded slowly. He knew Dad said they worked together, and that he failed him. The room fell silent except for the hum of the old refrigerator. Failed him how? Ethan asked. I don't know, she whispered. But when I asked, he looked like he'd seen a ghost. Ethan leaned back, trying to piece it together. Maybe you should just forget it, Lila. We've got enough problems. But forgetting wasn't an option? The look on Cole's face had carved itself into her memory. That wasn't the face of a businessman. It was the face of a man haunted by something he couldn't undo. She stood up and grabbed her jacket. I'm going back tomorrow, she said. He owes us the truth. Before Ethan could argue, a soft knock echoed on the door. 3 knocks. Pause. Then one more. Leela frowned. It was past midnight. No one ever visited them this late. She opened the door cautiously. A man stood in the hallway, tall, wearing a dark trench coat, his face hidden beneath a dripping hat. Miss Parker? He asked, voice low, firm. Yes, she whispered. He handed her an envelope, thick, sealed, and unmarked. Mr. Cole asked me to deliver this. He said you deserve to know the truth, but it comes with a warning. Before she could ask, he turned and disappeared down the stairwell, his footsteps fading into the rain. Ethan rushed to her side. Who was that? I don't know, she said, staring at the envelope. Her hands trembled as she broke the seal. Inside was a single black and white photo, her father and Raymond standing beside a truck marked Cole and Parker Logistics, but in the corner of the photo, barely visible, stood another man, a man wearing the same trench coat as the messenger, and scrawled in faint ink at the back of the photo were 4 chilling words. He never died, Lila. Her breath caught in her throat. Because if that was true, then the man she buried, her father, might still be alive. The next morning, the city looked washed and hollow after a night of relentless rain. Leela barely slept. The photograph lay on her bedside table, the faint words, he never died, burning in her mind like fire. By 9 a.m., she stood outside Cole Industries headquarters, a towering glass fortress that sliced through the clouds like a blade. People in suits rushed past her without noticing, just another face, another nobody. But not today. Today she wasn't a waitress. She was a daughter demanding answers. At the reception desk, she spoke softly. I'm here to see Mr. Raymond Cole. The receptionist blinked. Do you have an appointment? No, Lila said, clutching her purse tighter. But tell him it's about Daniel Parker. The woman froze mid-keystroke, eyes flickering with confusion, and something else, fear. She hesitated, then picked up the phone. After a tense pause, she nodded. He'll see you, she said quietly. Top floor. Layla's heart pounded as the elevator carried her upward. The mirrored walls reflected her anxious face, pale, determined, trembling. When the doors opened, she stepped into a world of marble floors, soft lighting and silence. Raymond's office was massive, its glass walls offering a view of the city that looked like another planet. He stood by the window, hands in his pockets, staring at the skyline. "I knew you'd come," he said without turning around. She swallowed hard. "What did you mean, my father didn't die?" He finally faced her. The years in his eyes seemed heavier now. "I didn't send that message," he said. "Someone wants you to believe that." Her brows knitted. "Then who did?" Raymond walked to his desk and opened a drawer, pulling out a thick folder marked Parker Case, Confidential. "Your father was declared dead after an ambush during a supply run," he began. "But his body was never recovered. I tried to find him, but the files were sealed by military command. I wasn't allowed near them." He slid the folder toward her. "These are copies of what little I could save." Layla opened it. Photos, reports, and letters filled the pages. Her father's signature appeared several times, the last dated 2 weeks after his supposed death. Her voice trembled. "This can't be real." Raymond's eyes darkened. "I don't know who's playing this game, Lila, but whoever sent that envelope, they know something I don't." Before she could reply, the intercom buzzed. "Sir?" said the receptionist's voice, shaking. "Security just called. There's a man downstairs asking for Miss Parker. Says his name is Daniel." The world stopped. Raymond's hand gripped the edge of his desk. "What did you say?" "Daniel Parker?" the voice repeated. "He says he's our father." Leela's knees nearly gave out. Her throat closed. "That's not possible," she whispered. But before either of them could move, the office lights flickered. Then, boom! The sound of shattered glass erupted from the hallway. 2 security guards rushed in, shouting, "Sir?" "Someone's breached the building." Then a familiar voice echoed through the chaos, deep, tired. "Layla!" She froze. Tears filled her eyes as she turned toward the doorway. And standing there, soaked in rain and years of ghosts, was the man from her childhood photo, older, scarred but unmistakably him, Daniel Parker, her father, alive. For a long moment, no one moved. The storm outside roared against the glass, as if the heavens themselves refused to believe what they were seeing. Layla stood frozen in the doorway, her breath shallow, her eyes wide. The man before her was older, thinner, his beard streaked with gray, his face marked by time and pain. But those eyes, those were her father's eyes. "Dad," she whispered, voice trembling. Daniel smiled faintly, tears forming as he took a hesitant step forward. "Lila, my little girl." She ran to him before her brain could catch up, throwing her arms around his neck. For a heartbeat, the world disappeared. No lies, no pain, no rain. Just the warmth of a reunion she'd stopped praying for. But behind them, Raymond Cole didn't move. He just stood there, jaw tight, every muscle in his face locked between disbelief and guilt. "How," he finally managed. "How are you alive?" Daniel gently released Layla, his expression hardening. "I shouldn't be," he said. "But the truth has a way of surviving. Even when men like you try to bury it." Raymond's breath caught. "You think I—" Daniel cut him off, his voice rough like gravel. "Don't play innocent, Cole. You left me to die." Layla turned sharply. "What do you mean?" "He said you were ambushed." Daniel let out a bitter laugh. "Ambushed? That's the word the reports used, huh?" "No, it wasn't an ambush. It was a setup." Raymond's face went pale. Daniel stepped closer. "That last shipment, the one everyone thought I stole, wasn't stolen at all. It was diverted under Cole and Parker Logistics. Signed off by you." Layla's eyes darted between them. "Wait, what are you saying?" Daniel looked straight at Raymond. "You sold military supplies on the black market. When the investigation started, you framed me to protect your company. You told the board I was the one behind it. And when I tried to expose you," his voice broke, "you sent men to silence me." Raymond's voice cracked. "That's not true. Then how did I end up shot and left for dead in the desert?" Daniel snapped. "I barely made it out alive. The ones who rescued me warned me never to come back. said you had powerful friends. So I vanished. Layla staggered back, clutching the edge of the desk. Her father's words sliced through her like glass. Raymond, she whispered, tears streaming. Is that true? Raymond's hands trembled. I didn't mean for it to happen that way. I was trying to save the company. They said if I didn't give them a name, they'd destroy everything we built. Everything we built? Daniel roared. You mean everything you stole? The air in the office turned electric, anger, guilt, disbelief all colliding at once. Then, suddenly, Daniel stumbled, clutching his chest. His breathing turned ragged. Lila screamed, catching him as he fell to his knees. Dad! Raymond rushed forward. Get medical, but Daniel grabbed his sleeve, his voice shaking. You want to fix this? He rasped. Then find him. The man who ordered it all. He's still out there, watching both of us. Who? Raymond demanded. Daniel's lips parted, but before he could speak, his body went limp in Lila's arms. No, 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 Dad, she cried, shaking him. Raymond pressed 2 fingers to Daniel's neck. His pulse was faint, but still there. He's alive, Raymond said. We need to move, now, because somewhere in the shadows of that tower, the real enemy was still waiting, and he had just realized his secret wasn't dead after all. Sirens echoed in the distance as Raymond's car sliced through the rain-drenched streets of the city. Layla sat in the back seat, her father's head resting on her lap, his breathing shallow but steady. Raymond drove with white-knuckled hands, eyes darting to the rearview mirror every few seconds. They weren't alone. A black SUV had been following them since they left the tower, no headlights, no license plate. Silent? Patient? Who are they? Layla whispered, her voice cracking. Raymond's jaw tightened. People who don't like old ghosts waking up. He swerved sharply into an alley and killed the lights. The SUV passed by, its shadow gliding over the wet pavement before disappearing into the storm. Layla exhaled shakily, brushing damp hair from her father's forehead. He needs a doctor. Raymond shook his head. Hospitals are the first place they'll look. I know someone safe. Minutes later, they pulled into a dimly lit garage behind a boarded-up clinic. A man in his 60s, Dr. Lawson, met them at the door. His eyes widened when he saw Daniel. Good God, he whispered. I thought he was dead. So did I, Raymond muttered. They laid Daniel on a cot. The doctor worked quickly. 4, oxygen, bandages, while Lila clung to her father's hand, whispering prayers she hadn't said in years. After a tense hour, Lawson stepped back. He'll live. For now. But he's weak. Whatever he went through, it wasn't just physical. Layla looked at Raymond, her voice trembling. He said someone ordered the attack. Who? Raymond's eyes darkened. Back then, our company had investors, silent partners. One of them was a man named Victor Halle, ruthless, smart, connected. Halle? She repeated. He nodded grimly. When Daniel started questioning where the money was going, Halle panicked. I tried to protect him, but Halle wanted him gone. So you let him take the blame? She said bitterly. Raymond's voice broke. I thought I could fix it later. I was wrong. Before either could say more, the doctor's phone buzzed on the counter, unknown number. He frowned, answered. Then froze. Get out, he whispered, eyes wide. They found you? Before they could react, the clinic windows shattered, glass exploding inward as masked. Men stormed in with guns drawn. Raymond grabbed Lila's arm and dove behind a counter. Stay down! Bullets ripped through the room. The doctor collapsed instantly, a crimson stain spreading across his coat. Lila screamed, clutching her father's limp hand as chaos erupted around them. Raymond returned fire, precise, controlled, but they were outnumbered. Then, over the gunfire, a voice echoed through a speaker, smooth, cold, familiar. Raymond, it said. You should have stayed buried with him. Lila froze. Who is that? Raymond's eyes filled with dread. Victor Halle. The voice laughed. You always said truth would set you free. Let's see if it can keep you alive. Then the line went dead. The sound of police sirens grew closer, but Raymond knew better. Those weren't rescuers. Halle owned half the force. He grabbed Lila's hand. We need to move him, now. Layla looked at her father, barely conscious, and whispered through tears, "How much more can we run from?" Raymond's voice turned to steel. "Until the truth stops running from us?" They vanished into the night, hunted, wounded, but united by the same truth Halle had killed to bury. The safe house was hidden deep beneath the city, a forgotten subway tunnel sealed after the war. Cold, damp air hung heavy with dust and secrets. Raymond led the way, flashlight trembling slightly in his hand. Layla followed, supporting her father, who leaned weakly against her shoulder. Daniel's eyes fluttered open now and then, his voice barely a whisper. "Not far. The files. Under Sector 9. Raymond nodded grimly. "I know. I hid them there myself." They reached a rusted metal door marked CNP Logistics Archive. Raymond punched a code into an ancient keypad. 0307. And the lock clicked open with a groan that echoed down the tunnel. Inside, rows of filing cabinets stood like tombstones, coated in layers of dust. Layla looked around in disbelief. "You kept all this hidden?" Raymond's voice was heavy. "Some truths are too dangerous to destroy and too damning to reveal." He pulled open a drawer labeled 2003-2004 Operations. Inside were photos, manifests, CONTRACTS proof of illegal arms transfers under Hale's name, every signature, every order, all connected to Victor Hale's empire of blood money. Layla's hands shook as she flipped through the files. "This could clear Dad's name. It could do more than that," Raymond said quietly. "It could bring Halle down." Daniel tried to speak but coughed violently, his strength fading. "Don't trust anyone," he rasped. "Halle has eyes everywhere." Raymond kneeled beside him. "We'll finish this, Daniel. I swear it." A sudden metallic clang echoed through the tunnels. Layla froze. "Did you hear that?" Before Raymond could answer, the overhead lights flickered, then died. Darkness swallowed them whole. Then, from the shadows, a voice, cold, mocking, amplified through hidden speakers. "You always were sentimental, Cole." Layla spun around. "Halle." A slow clap echoed through the darkness as Victor Halle stepped into the faint glow of the flashlight. Tall, silver-haired, wearing an immaculate suit, he looked more like a senator than a criminal. But his eyes, they were the eyes of a man who enjoyed watching others break. 20 years, Raymond, Halle said smoothly. "And after all this time, you're still chasing ghosts?" Raymond raised his gun. "It's over, Victor." Halle smiled. "No, my friend. It ended the day you chose loyalty over survival." He turned to Layla. "And you must be the daughter. You have his eyes. Your father was a fool, brave, but foolish." Layla's voice trembled with fury. "You destroyed his life." "I saved my company," Halle corrected calmly. "The same one that paid for your school, your food, your home. Every penny came from what he built for me." Raymond's finger tightened on the trigger. "One more word, Halle." But Halle raised his hand, revealing a detonator. "Careful. This tunnel is rigged with enough explosives to erase every secret you're clinging to." Layla's heart raced. "You wouldn't—" "Oh, I would," Halle interrupted. "You see, the world doesn't run on truth, Miss Parker. It runs on silence." For a split second, time seemed to freeze, 3 lives suspended between confession and collapse. Then Daniel stirred, his voice hoarse but clear. "You're wrong, Halle." Halle turned, startled. Daniel forced himself up, clutching a pistol Raymond hadn't noticed before. His hand shook, but his aim didn't. "I'd built this company for hope, not for men like you to poison it." He fired. The bullet struck Hale's shoulder, sending him sprawling back into the shadows. The detonator clattered to the floor. Layla screamed, diving for cover as dust and echoes filled the tunnel. When the smoke cleared, Halle was gone, and somewhere deep in the dark, a low ticking began. Tick, tick, tick. The sound echoed like a heartbeat inside the tunnel, slow at first, then faster, hungrier. Layla froze, staring at the detonator's red light flashing on the floor. Raymond grabbed her arm. "Run!" Daniel tried to move, but his knees gave way. "Go!" he gasped. "Save her, Ray!" Raymond hesitated. "I'm not leaving you again." But Layla's voice cut through the chaos, fierce and trembling. "We're not running. We end this, now." Raymond's eyes met hers, the same fire that once burned in Daniel's. He nodded, and together they sprinted toward the far end of the vault. Searching for the control panel Halle had used, the ticking grew louder, like the earth itself was counting down. On the floor, Daniel crawled toward the detonator, sweat dripping from his face. Every movement was agony, but his will refused to break. Meanwhile, Raymond tore open a fuse box. Sparks flew. "It's wired to a secondary circuit," he muttered. "We can't stop it from here." Leela's voice shook. "Then how do we stop it?" He looked back at her, eyes full of both guilt and resolve. "By giving Halle what he wants." Before Lila could speak, Raymond pulled a thick folder from his jacket, the files that proved Hale's crimes. "He didn't come for revenge," Raymond said. "He came for these. If I give them up, maybe he'll—" "No," Lila grabbed the folder, clutching it to her chest. "My father lost everything because of that man. You think we'll let him win again?" Raymond's jaw clenched. "Leela." Then a voice echoed through the tunnel speakers again. Calm, cruel, almost amused. "You always were predictable, Cole." Hale's voice. "You think I'd risk coming down there without insurance? The detonator isn't the only trigger. You shut it off, this whole tunnel still collapses." Leela's blood ran cold. "What do you want?" Halle chuckled. "Nothing more than what's mine. Walk out, leave the files. I'll even let your dear father live long enough to see daylight again." Raymond's hand trembled over the control wires. "Don't listen to him." Daniel coughed, his voice breaking through the static. "He's lying. He never lets anyone live with truth." The ticking quickened faster, faster, now seconds from zero. Leela's heartbeat matched it. Her mind flashed through everything, the portrait on the wall, her father's haunted eyes, the guilt in Raymond's voice. Then, suddenly, Daniel shouted, "Leela, the red wire!" She dropped beside the detonator, hands shaking as she stared at the tangle of wires. Raymond's flashlight flickered red, blue, yellow, and one faintly pulsing crimson wire. Leela gritted her teeth. "Please, God." Her fingers snapped the red wire. Silence. Then one single beep, followed by another. Raymond's eyes widened. "It's not disarmed, it's restarting." Before anyone could react, a blinding light flared at the end of the tunnel, the emergency shutters unlocking. Through the smoke stepped Victor Halle, clutching his wounded arm, smiling like a ghost who refused to die. "Well," he said softly, "I guess we'll all go down together." Raymond raised his gun. "Not today." Then, from behind Halle, a gunshot echoed sharp, sudden. Hale's smile vanished as blood bloomed across his chest. Daniel stood there, pistol shaking in his hand, eyes glassy but fierce. "For my daughter," he whispered. "For the truth." Halle fell, the detonator clattering from his hand, rolling toward the firelight. Tick, tick. Lila screamed, diving toward it, and everything went white. Silence. No ticking. No voices. Only the faint sound of crackling fire and falling dust. Leila's ears rang as she blinked through the smoke. Everything was white and red, flashes of flame, echoes of pain. She coughed, dragging herself up from the debris. "Dad?" she whispered. "Raymond?" A faint groan answered her from the shadows. She stumbled toward it, hands trembling. Daniel lay half-buried under twisted metal, blood seeping from his side. But when he saw her, he smiled. That same, gentle smile she remembered from childhood. "You're safe," he whispered. Leela shook her head, sobbing. "We need to get you out." Raymond appeared from behind the smoke, limping badly but alive. His face was streaked with soot and grief. He dropped to his knees beside Daniel. "Don't talk." "Help's coming." Daniel chuckled weakly. "You said that once before, remember? In Kandahar." Raymond's eyes filled. "And I broke that promise." Daniel's hand gripped his wrist, firm despite the pain. "Then keep this one. Protect her." Layla cried harder, clutching her father's hand. "You're coming with us." Daniel shook his head slowly. "No, sweetheart. My time's done. But you tell them the truth. Don't let my name fade in shame." His voice faltered. "Promise me." Leila's tears fell onto his chest. "I promise." And with a final, shaky breath, Daniel Parker, the man branded a traitor, the soldier who carried guilt for another's lie, was gone. The sound that followed wasn't an explosion this time. It was silence. The kind that breaks you more than noise ever could. Raymond bowed his head, whispering, "I'm sorry, brother." Hours later, rescue crews found them, Layla clutching her father's tags, Raymond sitting beside her in the ruins, holding the folder that had cost them everything. Weeks passed. The media erupted when the files were leaked anonymously to the press. Cole and Parker whistleblower reveals 20-year cover-up. Daniel Parker posthumously cleared of all charges. Victor Hale's empire crumbled overnight. His crimes became headlines, his assets seized, his name erased. But for Layla, victory didn't taste like triumph. It tasted like ashes and rain. One evening, she visited her father's grave, a small marble stone in a quiet field. Engraved simply, Captain Daniel Parker, a man of honor. Raymond stood beside her, coat fluttering in the wind. His once sharp face now carried the weight of peace and regret. "I'm leaving the company," he said quietly. "I'll rebuild it in his name. Not Cole Industries, Parker Foundation. For veterans, for their families, for truth." Layla looked at him, the man who had once betrayed her father, now choosing to live by his example. "You finally kept your promise," she whispered. He nodded slowly. "Because your father taught me what it means to be human again." They stood in silence as the sun dipped below the horizon. Light bleeding gold across the gravestone. Lila touched the cold marble and smiled faintly. "You were right, Dad. The truth doesn't die. It just waits for someone brave enough to speak it." A breeze swept through the field, rustling the grass like a whisper from another world. And somewhere deep inside, the ghosts of guilt and grief finally slept.